Let's try this again. Here we go. There's a video, Jay Peterson, H. McDonald. What's wrong with higher education?
What's wrong with higher education? What's wrong with the academy? Give it to.
One thing, it feels like, as a general rule, like, my perspective on higher education is that it is basically a calculated risk, right? You go into what is basically a far more specialized type of education. The idea being that the risk, the money, the time that you invest in this will be repaid by a job. Calculated risk. Like, if you think you can get the job, if you think that's what you want to do in life, or it's worth doing, even perhaps if you fail, then it's worth it. But if not, it feels like it's perhaps a good idea, especially if you're going into a field where the probability of you getting the actual job is quite low. It feels like it might be best to keep options open, more or less. Like, to not put all of your eggs in that proverbial basket, because anyways.
To us as straight as you can and take as long as you need.
Well, it's abdicated its responsibility to infuse students with the sense of their extraordinary privilege to be reading works of utter sublimity. The faculty should approach these works with love, gratitude.
That's a lot of big words, honestly. I do kind of, I guess I don't even know what her point is, but I do tend to think, like, especially recently, they've almost taken a stance of, I guess, that the classics, the geniuses of, I guess, at least European antiquity are as dross, so to speak.
Gratitude and a sense of joy. And they have one responsibility: to cram as much knowledge of greatness and of our inheritance into students' empty noggins as possible in 4 years. Instead, they're teaching students to hate the greatest works of Western civilization, and to hate, frankly, each other, because the reigning ideology on campuses is that of victimhood. And students are immediately categorized from the moment they step on a campus as either belonging to the high-status victim groups or the oppressors. And they go through the next 4 years seeing things through that lens of victimhood and oppression, which is a tragedy and an extraordinary loss of opportunity.
Well, with any luck, once they get out, maybe they can recover. I think there are, like, it is weird, like, when you go to places like that. For the record, I've never been to college, but I've been to what would be maybe parallel type of experiences a little bit. You can get into, like, a really weird headspace when you're around people for extended periods of time. I'm not overly fond of it as a general rule. I tend to think I seem to be highly assimilative when I'm around people for extended periods of time. Like, I'll start to mimic their behavior and whatnot. I think everyone is to some extent. I think everyone's a little bit mimetic. You can get into these group think, especially when you're in proximity with people every day of the week and you live together on the same grounds and talk to these people and associate with these people. And when you get back to what is the real world, you're looking back on it and you're like, what the Harry was that? That was, like, the weird, like, how did I think that way? How did I behave that way? Yeah. Oh.
To me,
Download complete.
I think this has happened. This is mostly characteristic of the humanities.
For the record, I like ragging on Jordan Peterson. I think it's just because everyone likes him so much, and he's kind of this kind of staple intellectual these days. He's a nice. He seems like a nice guy, and he seems to be quite clever as well. It's not going to stop me from picking on him.
And to a lesser degree of the social sciences, but increasingly will become characteristic of the STEM fields, because they're under assault, I would say, by the same agents who undermine the humanities and the social sciences. And I would say, of all the dangers that the current situation in the university presents, that's probably the one that's primary, because so far the STEM fields have remained relatively.
I don't know what STEM fields are. I'm assuming they have more to do with like hard science or something. Could be wrong about that.
Let's say unviolated by the.
And humanities would be more like artistic or something along those lines.
Intellectual corruption that characterizes the other disciplines, and they're of crucial importance, obviously practically speaking, but also as a bulwark against the ideological pathology that currently passes for academic knowledge in the institutes of higher education.
And I'm assuming this isn't really a debate because they both seem like they're kind of on the same page about this a little bit. I think they're kind of on
What's
the same
wrong
page.
exactly? I see it, I really see it as a continuation of a process that was identified by both Nietzsche and Dostoevsky at the end of the 19th century, that it's a continuation of the collapse of the idea of God, or collapse in the belief in God, or maybe if you thought about it psychologically, as a collapse in the archetype of divine masculinity. That's another way of thinking about it. I mean, Nietzsche warned that.
I can honestly say I don't think I've ever heard the term divine masculinity before. I'm interested to know what
that
maybe I don't want to know.
if we lost our fundamental foundation block, which was the notion of a transcendent divinity, that we would degenerate in two directions. One direction being nihilism, and the other direction being its twin, its malformed twin, totalitarianism. And that was his diagnosis for the 20th century. And I think that's exactly what happened during the 20th century. It's a diagnosis of stunning accuracy, especially given how relatively early in the 19th century it was made. And Dostoevsky, for his part, made exactly the same case, particularly in The Devils, The Possessed, the book's variously titled, which is a study of the corrosive effects of really.
I wish I could be saying more here, but I don't really. Maybe I don't understand it enough, or maybe I don't have enough to say on this point.
Of an ideology very, very similar to the one that reigns today in the university campuses. The Devils is a literary work that describes the intellectual and moral
Just
genesis
explaining it.
of exactly the type of thinker who caused the catastrophes of the Russian Revolution. It would be 30 years later, I guess. So it's another work of incredibly prescient insight, almost incomprehensible.
It is strange how like some authors like maybe as a side effect of what is basically conjecture on their point, they're imagining something happening, but their ability to conceptualize or to logically extrapolate based off of reality is, I guess, life imitating art. That might be the phrase used. Could be argued as to how it comes about, but their predictions or whatever seem to reveal themselves then in reality. It's an interesting concept.
With the law.
Some of the science fiction writers, I think, are the ones I was maybe thinking about. That maybe be a thing that's kind of phenomenon that kind of happens.
Loss of that, see, the problem with the loss of that idea, and I'm speaking psychologically, I would say, which is what I try to do as much as possible, is that regardless of your religious belief, you cannot exist outside a hierarchy of value.
I don't know how much I want to go into this again. I guess my own thoughts on college stuff. It is a calculated risk. Another thing I had mentioned like I've gone into places like that would be kind of parallel experiences with that, where you get into a weird headspace. This is a thing I think is important for anyone who's religious or anyone who wants to hold certain values. It seems like communities, I've said this before, I think communities are more dangerous than ideas. Ideas will get you to think differently, perhaps, but communities can legitimately change the things you want. So be very, very careful when you're going into a place where you're becoming part of a community of people, right? Be aware that that will probably change your desires, the way you perceive the world, your perspective writ large. And again, coming back to the idea that college is a calculated risk, right? You go into it, like, obviously, high school is pretty much kind of a generalized type of knowledge. College tends to be that you major in something, right? A more specified type of knowledge predicated on the idea that you will get a job in that. That's by no means a certainty. So it feels like it's best not to maybe jump in with both feet unless you're quite sure what can happen. And there are certain vocations like athletics or something like that where it's like a 1 in a million chance that you will actually get the thing you want to do. So especially in situations where it's a very, very small group of peoples, like athletics, astronauts, or I don't know, rocket scientists or whatever, there's not a lot of jobs, but there might be a lot of people who want those jobs. It's maybe worth keeping your options open with regards to this. P.S. I might be having a little bit more of an erratic upload schedule here, for a while at least, so bear that in mind. But, yeah, you can always go back and watch some of my old stuff if you so desire. I will probably still be doing the video or the video game playthroughs that will be then uploaded to my Patreon. But again, like you can watch it live in theory on my Twitch because that's where I stream to. So you can do it there. But then the video will be delisted after I'm done with it, and then uploaded to my Patreon. But yeah, playing through Imagine Earth right now. So. Alright, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please press the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment if you want to. Bye.